Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, and happy Shochu'sday to everyone around the world. Big Kanpai to all of you for joining us
Cheers.
as always. If it's the first time, if it's the 110th time, 110th episode today, we have a very concrete reason to Kanpai, and it's Wednesday today in Japan, so you'll be able to Kanpai for the next few days. But we'll get to that in a moment. Anything up with you? Any news, Steven? I don't know if we can bust straight into booze news here, but what's on
Booze
your
news. Well,
mind?
that's a quick transition. Good morning,
That
Christopher.
that was wasn't. I've had my cup of coffee and I'm ready and raring to
Yeah,
go.
clearly. Yeah, no, actually, the one. Let's see if I can track it down. Sorry, a little disorganized. I thought there was a really interesting article, not Japan booze related, but I think you'll see how it can lead into a conversation around that.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a recent piece uh, by our friend Susanna Skeever Barton. She wrote an article for Gear Patrol, which never heard of Gear Patrol. Maybe I have. But really thoughtful piece on luxury American whiskeys. Let me see if I can share my
Yeah,
screen
okay. I
here.
read I read that one. She was commenting on how do you price a bottle of American whiskey, a single malt, at $1,500 a bottle, basically.
Yeah. So forget the recharge your life. That's an ad. But does America's $1,500 luxury whiskey live up to its name? And the article was really striking for me. There was this American luxury single malt that was released, the Maclo, a 7-year-old whiskey from an unnamed Kentucky distillery, aged in new oak and bottled at 46%. And it's a single cask, 250 or fewer than 250 bottles available, and the SRP was $1,500. And if you know, and then this is what struck me here. We want it to be the Ferrari of single malts. Now I'm going to stop sharing my screen now. Uh, I want to just start with that concept, the Ferrari of single malts. Why
Mm-hmm.
do Ferraris cost $400,000? Well, they're hand-built race cars, basically.
Sure.
They're extremely expensive to build. They're extremely expensive to maintain. There's a reason that they're a luxury item, but that was built off of an incredible history of racing success. They were a racing car building company before they were building cars for public
Right.
use,
Yeah,
for road
sure.
use, and they have decades and decades of world championships and world championship winning drivers and Le Mans championships and
Mm-hmm.
just decades of success to lead to the point where they're considered a luxury product, right? And this is clearly not that. This is unnamed distillery. Uh, let's try to capitalize on pretty packaging and a good ad
And
campaign and see if we
yeah,
can
sure.
and sell it. And more power to them if they can get people to buy it and they can make a successful business out of it. And there are people that enjoy it. That's great. But for me, that that contrast in what this brand is and the brand that they're trying to be is just so stark, right? Of course,
Yeah.
you're never going to have a clear comparison between a racing car and a spirits brand, but if the production methods were extremely difficult to, the product was extremely difficult to make, the base ingredients were very rare, they're very expensive. They're using heirloom grains from, I don't know, some historical farm, something like that. You start to get to the point where it starts to make a little bit more sense. So it was really striking, the for me, this kind of contrast and thinking about what is a luxury item. Now there are luxury brands, let's say on the fashion side of things, that are now being manufactured in China, right? They were
Sure.
Italian brands, are now being made in China, but people still buy them, people still enjoy them, and that's great
That's
if you
because they
enjoy
built
it.
the brand.
Right, exactly. They
Yeah.
built it in Italy with craftsmen making these bags or these shoes or whatever it is that they're making, and then they were able to industrialize the production, right,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
hopefully maintain some sort of quality standards. But are these bag's still worth $5,000 or $15,000 or whatever they cost. But that's up to the consumer. If you can find somebody willing to pay and they're happy with what they pay, that's great. But I worry that for a brand like this, with a first release $1,500 bottle of 7-year-old whiskey, no provenance for the distillery.
Yeah, that's what gets me.
Right. Yeah. I think it's a difficult sell for me, and I just worry about the sustainability of this kind of business model for a spirits.
Yeah, I think it's a gamble. I think when you're going in with your message being this is premium and there's not really anything else other than yes, it's a really nice form factor. But then you have the price to vouch for how premium it is. That absolutely can work up to a point, and the scarcity quotient there is certainly compelling. But if you're gonna try and scale it all, then you're gonna run into certain problems, and I think I would hope that business is already aware of them. The other problem being, and Susanna doesn't pull any punches here, is that it doesn't taste like a $1,500 bottle of whiskey. It's not nearly as good as it really should be at that price point.
Sure.
And you would expect, some really serious complexity that is balanced, that makes sense, and the sum of the parts are much greater than, it really it tells a story on the palate, and I think that was where one thing that's lacking, and that's one thing that's going to continually drag it down. But it is a really interesting thought experiment for everybody out there in terms of what is luxury, and Susanna brings it up. She says what's luxury to someone who's used to buying a $35 bottle of whiskey is very different to someone who's used to buying a $600 bottle of whiskey. Right. So to each her or his own, and that's fine. But it was a really good, she just puts it all out there and says, hey, what is luxury to you? And I think it comes back to something that we always fall back on is like, hey, if it tastes good and you're happy to pay the price, then that's good enough.
Drink it.
Really.
Yeah.
So, they sold out that first cask. Hey.
Yeah. Yeah, mostly to high-end restaurants and bars in Manhattan.
Sure. Yeah, they know their clientele.
That's right.
For them.
Yeah. No, the article is definitely a good read. That's the reason I brought it up. Obviously, it has nothing to do with Japanese spirits, but it also made me think a little bit about, part of the reason that the whiskey labeling standards were brought out was because there were these distilleries here in Japan bringing in Scotch, repackaging it, bottling it in Japan, and charging a premium for it without anybody knowing the provenance of the distillate. So this isn't only a issue for American whiskey.
Sure, not at all. Yeah. Colby's out here drinking Taiso Ancient Greatness in celebration of me. Maybe that sounds like an anniversary of sorts, a birthday perhaps, whatever it happens to be.
That's an Iki Shochu.
Iki Shochu.
Yeah.
Congratulations to you, whatever the event may be, and nice choice.
Yeah.
And then Mark's out here chugging some Chuko, which we like. We always appreciate that.
Nice
call,
choice.
Mark, sorry. And that's probably a good lead into, at least especially Colby's rejoiner. Let me send us to where the hell is it? There it is. Okay. Coming up is on July 1st is Iki Shochu Day. And maybe, Stephen, can you give us a quick reminder of what Iki Shochu is? Why is there a day for it? Why is it so important?
Iki Shochu is one of 4 shochu or koji distilled spirits from Japan that have World Trade Organization protection as a geographical indication. Iki Island, which is part of Nagasaki Prefecture, but is actually due west of Fukuoka, so pretty far north for being part of Nagasaki, is an island it's between it's in the Sea of Japan between Korea and Japan, and it's near Tsushima, which was a trading island between Korea and Japan. But Iki was believed to be the first place that barley shochu was made, and so they have a GI protection from the WTO for Iki Shochu, which by rule has to be rice koji and then adding barley. That's the standard. It's 1/3 rice koji and 2/3 barley.
Hmm.
And after that, anything else goes as far as how you produce it. But there are 7 distilleries on a pretty small island. Um, so it's and they definitely punch above their weight, given the small number of distilleries. You see their shochu pretty often
Yeah.
around.
Yep. That's
Yeah,
definitely true.
within Japan, I think the most common brand I see is Iki Gold, which is a barrel
Absolutely.
aged Iki
Absolutely.
Shochu.
Hmm.
Just quite nice, easy drinking. That's often my default if I'm in an izakaya with like lots of main brands, like kind of mass market brands, and they have Iki Gold as an option. I'll usually drink that as a highball.
I
Nice.
have it here somewhere and I cannot find it.
It's buried. Um, yeah, and there's one distillery that makes a handmade style, right, with the Chingu brand.
Yeah,
And
that's what I have today.
yeah, nice.
I have their summer. Label,
Oh yeah,
which is
good old Natsu Shochu.
the Natsu Shochu. This one's only 19% ABV. That's nice.
Yeah.
Chingu
Okay.
Chingu's great because it's especially, and you can get Chingu in the States.
Mhm.
Whew. Yeah, it's so good. It has a lot of fruity notes to it, even though it's a barley and rice distillate. A lot of banana on it and other tropical notes, which is really interesting. And this one goes great with sparkling water, as you can probably imagine.
Yeah, no question. That's really how the summer shochus are designed is to be consumed light and refreshing. Nobody wants too much booze in the heat of the Japanese summer. So low ABV, add a lot of sparkling water, and you got a delicious drink. Yeah, and I actually, knowing that Iki Shochu'sday was coming and not having any handy, I actually picked this up recently. This is actually called Showa Jikomi, which means Showa era, so an old style of shochu, and it's apparently made with an heirloom variety of barley, and it's more on the atmospheric side. A lot of grain notes. You get the aroma of I always think of it as the koji fermentation aroma, which is pronounced in some sake and some shochu, but this is very, very present. So really nice drink. I was enjoying it last night on the rocks, and I tried it with soda as well. I think I preferred it on the rocks, but nice drink as well. So Showa Jikomi, a nice retro looking label.
That is super retro.
Yeah, so pretty fun. I like the bottle form factor as well.
Yeah.
I'd had this before, and I'd occasionally see it at the liquor store and just never picked it up. And then I was like, we got Iki Shochu'sday coming up. I'll grab that and see how it goes. It's I hadn't had it in a while, and it's nice to come back to it. It's a good one. But I've only been to Iki once, and that's almost criminal considering how close I live. Because it's literally a ferry ride away from. Yeah, and it's it's an actual jet foil, so it's a quick ride over. Mark asks if there's any ryokan on Iki Island, and yes, there are. The one time that I went, I stayed in a nice ryokan, steps away from a couple of nice izakaya, pretty quiet little sleepy neighborhood, and really enjoyed it there. So highly worth a visit. If you're a cyclist, it's a great place to go ride.
It's pretty flat, isn't it?
It's got some hills, but they're not horrible if you don't mind. If you've got gears, you would want to go on a single speed. But it's a nice little island to ride around. It's got some nice sights. The seafood is incredible. Apparently, there are all these ocean currents that converge on the island, and so fresh squid, fresh sea urchin, fresh fish, lots of great things to eat out there on Iki. So
yeah, it's a big fishing area, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. That's a lot of the trading was done between fishermen, between Iki and Tsushima, Korea and Japan.
Oh, sure.
It's a really illicit kind of black market. And we think that may be how distillation technology arrived in northern Kyushu, was Korean fishermen trading with their Japanese counterparts out on Tsushima. So yeah.
Yeah, and
Should be
today lots of sport casual fisher, like weekend fishermen, fishers go out to that being one of the destinations for people to go to enjoy a pretty robust spectrum of marine life in terms of what you can hook. So,
sure. Yeah.
very cool. So if you're at least in the States, I believe there are a couple of Iki brands in the States now.
That's right.
So if you can get a hold of Chingu, I believe the dark label is there. Is that right? And
Yeah.
then there's one other brand I think that
There's,
is.
there's Yamano Mori,
Thank
which
you.
is
There,
an
that's it.
atmospheric distilled Iki Shochu. It's very grainy. It's pretty similar to this. It's got a lot of almost buttery notes. And then there's also the brand called Iki, which
That's
is
there too.
vacuum distilled.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yes, there's a fair number. They're not that hard to find if you know where to look.
Huh. That's easier to
so-
find than it is up here where I live.
Yeah.
That's fortunate. Well, very cool. Moving on to, I don't know if we have any recently opens. Do you? Oh, other than
I
the,
opened
the
this.
show
I
us
opened this
Shoei?
yesterday. Yeah. But
I don't know if
I
I
guess
have.
the other, I guess our other big news is that we have a new episode of the podcast out.
Oh,
Uh,
yeah, that's what we were
the-
supposed to get to.
Koji episode. We
Okay.
finally did one completely on koji. We talk about koji in almost every episode, but we went with a full episode on koji, dive a little bit deeper on the biochemical processes and that sort of thing. It's a deep dive. It's pretty geeky for those of you who like that kind of thing. So that should have landed in your podcast feed this morning, U.S. time, and it was a fun one. And we also announced our Patreon. So for those of you interested in supporting the show, we finally decided to sign up for Patreon, and we will have interesting things available to our subscribers in the future. So cool.
Nice.
That's all I got. Yeah, it's kind of a quick one, but
That's all I got. Yeah, that's pretty much all I'm selling today too. I do not have any other recently opens. I'm still just pouring through samples right now. So
yeah, you and me both.
nothing exciting. Unlabeled stuff, which I'm not really allowed to show. So yeah, I guess we're gonna call it right there. This is maybe a new record in terms of brevity, which probably nobody minds too much.
Yeah, we should try to keep them under 30 minutes at least. I think.
Absolutely. Yeah, I completely agree, unless we have a guest on. Okay, well,
Great.
cool. Next week, let's see, what is coming up? So it is Iki Shochu-day on Friday, so people need to pour one out for the fisher people of yore. And other than that, next week, I don't know if we have a clear theme for next week that's popping to mind at the end of this
figure one out.
episode. Yeah. Okay. Well,
It'll be fun,
everyone,
whatever it is.
who's sticking around and I'm speaking specifically about Mark and Colby, who have been participating both on YouTube, appreciated, and to those of you on Facebook, to everybody else out there around the world who comes to this at a later date in archive, from both of us here in Japan, a very hearty and heartfelt kanpai.
Kanpai.